The Ice Age, a term usually reserved for prehistory, for woolly mammoths and primitive tribes. But what if the clock didn't just stop, it turned back? What if the climate crisis we've been bracing for didn't end in fire, but in a sudden, violent freeze? Imagine a world where the sun still shines, but it provides no warmth. Imagine the great skyscrapers of the world, from the Burj Khalifa to the One World Trade Center, standing as nothing more than colossal icicles, monuments to a civilization that thought it was too big to fail. Today, we are diving deep into a terrifying what if. We are exploring the collapse of the modern order. You are watching the Fate Flip History, where we peel back the skin of reality to see the darkness underneath. Which of today's superpowers would survive a global deep freeze, and which would be erased from the maps forever? The breaking point isn't 1,000 years away. It begins with a whisper in the North Atlantic. In our current timeline, scientists warn us about the weakening of the Gulf Stream, the massive conveyor belt of warm water that keeps the Northern Hemisphere habitable. In this flipped reality, that conveyor belt doesn't just weaken, it snaps. A massive influx of fresh water from the melting Arctic reaches a critical threshold in the mid-2020s, and the engine of the world's climate stalls. Within 5 years, the fate flip is complete. This isn't a gradual cooling. It is a thermal hammer. The average temperature in London drops to that of northern Siberia. The monsoon rains in Asia fail. The jet stream becomes a chaotic whip of Arctic air. The world we built was predicated on a stable climate, but the climate just filed for divorce. This atmospheric betrayal triggers a domino effect that dismantles civilization in waves of frost and fury. The butterfly effect of this freeze is a symphony of destruction played in 3 movements. First, the economic extinction. Our global economy is a machine built on the flow of goods across the oceans. But when the North Atlantic becomes an impassable field of icebergs and frozen ports like Rotterdam, New York, and Hamburg go silent, the machine seizes up. The US dollar, once the bedrock of global trade, collapses because the nation behind it is too busy trying to dig its capital out of 10 feet of snow. The world shifts from a gold standard to a calorie standard. Food is the only wealth. Energy is the only power. Nations that once exported electronics now hoard every drop of oil just to keep their citizens from freezing in their beds. We see the death of the consumer. No one is buying the latest smartphone when the battery dies in minutes due to the cold, and there is no power to charge it anyway. Factories in the north don't just close, they are crushed under the weight of accumulating snow that never melts.
Second, the Great Migration Wars. We are talking about billions of people. As the northern reaches of Canada, Russia, and the United States become uninhabitable tundras, a human tide begins to flow south. But this isn't a peaceful relocation. It is a desperate, clawing struggle for survival. The borders of the Mediterranean, the Rio Grande, and the Himalayas become the most violent places on Earth. Superpowers don't fight for ideology or territory anymore. They fight for the green zone, the narrow band of land around the equator where the soil isn't frozen solid. The geopolitical map is redrawn in blood and frost. Imagine the United States military not defending freedom abroad, but desperately trying to secure a foothold in Central America. Imagine the remains of the European Union trying to negotiate for a patch of desert in North Africa that has suddenly become the most valuable real estate on the planet. Third, the technological dark age. Our modern world lives in the cloud, but the cloud runs on hardware, infrastructure, power lines, server farms, fiber optic cables is not built to withstand a permanent sub-zero nightmare. As the power grids of the northern superpowers fail under the weight of historic blizzards and the lack of maintenance, the internet begins to fragment. We go from a world of instant global communication to a world of isolated, shivering city-states. The digital records of our civilization become as unreadable as ancient hieroglyphics. Satellites fall out of orbit because the ground stations required to keep them aligned are buried under glaciers. Knowledge is lost. The collective memory of humanity begins to fade as we focus entirely on the next meal and the next fire.
If you were to look at the world today in this frozen reality, the superpowers you know are gone. Canada, a memory, a white void on the map where cities once stood. Scandinavia, a graveyard of ice, its proud social models buried under sheets of white. The Russian Federation, shattered into warring factions, huddled around geothermal vents and deep earth coal mines, fighting for the warmth of the planet's core. The United States has contracted into a small, authoritarian state centered in the deep south and parts of Mexico. Its northern cities, abandoned cathedrals of glass and steel, home only to wolves and the wind. China's industrial heartland is buried under a permafrost that will not melt for 1,000 years, its population displaced or decimated by the failure of the rice harvests. The new masters of the world are the tropical titans: Brazil, Nigeria, Indonesia, and India. Nations that were once developing are now the only places where the sun still grants life. They hold the keys to survival. They control the only remaining farmland. They are the new empires, and they do not forget how the North once treated them. The room you are in right now is a bunker, or a heavily insulated shell of what used to be a home. Your life is measured by the remaining fuel in your heater and the thickness of the ice on your door. This is the reality when history flips the switch. We thought we were the masters of nature, but nature just decided to change the locks. This is the frozen end of the world as we know it. A world where the titans were humbled, not by a rival army, but by the very air they breathed. It makes you realize how fragile our dominance truly is. Our entire history, our wars, our art, our ego, all of it depends on a few degrees of temperature.
If the ice came tonight, would you be a survivor or just another relic for a future civilization to find in the thaw 10,000 years from now? Here at the Fate Flip History, we don't just tell stories, we explore the fragile threads that hold our world together. We look into the abyss so you don't have to. If this journey into the cold has opened your eyes to the fragility of our world, make sure to subscribe to the Fate Flip History and hit that notification bell. We are building a community of thinkers who aren't afraid to look into the what if and prepare for the what next. What is the first thing you would do if the news announced the permanent arrival of the new ice age? Would you head south, or would you try to build a life in the frost? Tell us your survival strategy in the comments below. Your insight might just be the spark someone needs. Stay curious, stay prepared, and remember, history is only one flip away from a totally different world. This is the Fate Flip History, signing off.